Why, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Despite all of the hype, San Diego Padres of the year 2022 unfortunately could not go out on top. Recapping the weekends and a eulogy, I guess you could call this episode. You know what you're listening to. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, October 24th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with some of my work at justbaseball.com, where I write about the Padres and other baseball things in general. You can also find me on Twitter at Javapena, where I tweet a bunch of memes, usually memes. Not only, but usually a whole bunch of memes there, twitter.com. Great website at Javapeno, Javiiipeno, and then at LO_Padres for all my game thoughts on the Padres exclusively. Today's episode of Locked On Padres is sponsored by Simply Safe Home Security with fast protecting technology exclusively from Simply Safe. 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnLB to learn more. On today's episode, everybody, oh boy, it's a eulogy for the San Diego Padres, ladies and gentlemen. Their season has come to an end, and man, is there a lot to talk about. I don't know how long this episode's going to go, to be perfectly honest with you. It might go a while because there's a lot to talk about. I think we should start off by saying, look, congrats to the Phillies. And I mean that because I really don't want to do the thing where you sort of, whether indirectly or directly, like cheapen the team that beat you, right? You don't want to do that, right? You don't want to do this thing where you start saying, oh, well, if we just did this, if we just did that. You don't want to do that because the Phillies were really incredible in this series. You saw guys like Schwarber, guys like Rhys Hoskins really step up, unfortunately, unlike the Padres' secondary bats, and really just go off. And then Bryce Harper, we're going to talk about that, especially to start off. We're going to talk about yesterday's game, but the Phillies deserve a lot of credit. And I imagine, to be honest with you, as someone who is still just a baseball person, and I mentioned I write about them, right? Like I'm still probably going to watch the World Series and very likely very hard for, or not very hard, that's not a right way to say it, but I'll have a leaning to root for the Phillies over the Astros to win the World Series. Although, granted, it's kind of whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be upset if I miss the games. So congrats to the Phillies. Played one heck of a series, and I do mean that. It was a heck of a series. I know that the Padres ended up losing 4-1, but it really was pretty good. I really do believe that. We had a lot of close games, including yesterday's. You had an onslaught of offense in Saturday's game. Friday's game was close too. Like close, I really do think good baseball. And this Yankees ALCS versus the Astros, for example, the exception of the game that's going on right now while I record this, not a great series. So at least I'm thankful for that. And we'll get into other things about the Padres in a little bit. But let's talk about yesterday's game. I don't know where to start. Let's first start with the easy stuff, which is Yu Darvish, yet again coming up big for the team, going 6 innings, 2 earned runs. He did walk 3, which was actually the most he's walked in quite some time, actually since September 8th against the Diamondbacks. That's the most walks that Darvish has allowed, but still only 2 earned runs. He had 5 Ks, pitching through the rain. He was good. Darvish was good, and I had almost no doubt about that. Darvish was truly unbelievable this year when you think about his age and everything. And he deserves, to be honest with you, a whole episode just dedicated to Yu Darvish. And I'm definitely going to be doing that, stuff like that, focusing on players in the offseason for sure. But let's continue. And on the other side of things, for the Phillies, Zach Wheeler, equally as good, 6 innings, 2 earned runs on 3 hits, no walks, 8 Ks. I did like that the Padres clearly approached him a little bit better this time, or at least a little bit better, but Granted, it was still really hard to hit Zach Wheeler, and that's fine because that's what was to be expected. I'm not going to hate the offense because of them not being able to hit Zach Wheeler. Let's get into what really matters. I think we need to just jump right into it. We got to talk about Bob Melvin. Because there's a lot of decisions that were made this weekend. And again, at the top of this podcast, I want to be clear. I don't want to make it sound like this is only making excuses, because the Padres, bottom line is the Phillies were the better team. And I don't like doing this thing where you just scapegoat and say, this is the only reason we lost. Look, they did beat us. Let me be very clear about that. That being said, the decision in this game to not bring in Josh Hader to face Bryce Harper, arguably one of the 5 most feared hitters in baseball. You put him up there with Trout. You put him up there with what's his face with Manny Machado. Even you put him up there with Yordan Alvarez, who's still in the playoffs as we speak. Aaron Judge, like really one of the best players in baseball, and he's a guy who deserves a lot of credit. He's been on fire in the postseason. In fact, I think he's hitting like over 400. And they elect to have Robert Suarez, who in fairness had been very, very good for the Padres all playoffs. And to be honest with you, all season. And somebody actually responded to me saying, I think it was longtime tweeter and listener of the show, Rama Murdy, I think mentioned like, it's almost like, of course, the season begins with Robert Suarez imploding and it ends, it looks like, with Robert Suarez imploding. So that was a good point made by my guy there. Look, it's here's my thing. This is going to be rightfully compared to the Buck Showalter scenario. Buck Showalter scenario, of course, everybody very famously, Zach Britton, one of the great single seasons of closing games. He led the league in saves. ERA was under 1 for Baltimore, and he didn't even bring him in an elimination game. I don't think it's quite the same as that, just because that was a 1-game playoff, like wild card, while this is a thing where you have to, if you're Melvin, you have to be like, okay, do we want to use Hader now? He hasn't pitched in a while. It's been a few days, right? And all that stuff. But my issue is fundamentally, if Bryce Harper is going to beat you, I want him to go up against our best. And I know that that wasn't the case a while ago, but Hader clearly had gotten it back, especially towards the end of the season, the last week of the season, and in the playoffs. And they like to not do that. And then Robert Suarez gets taken deep in what was a really tough at bat. In fairness, it's not like Harper got thrown a donut on pitch number 2, right? This was not what happened in Saturday's game, which, believe me, we will be talking about. Fought off a bunch of pitches, and then Harper takes him deep. It was the worst case scenario, and it happens. My big issue is 2 things about this decision. One, I understand, all right, Hader hasn't pitched in a little bit. Maybe you like a matchup with Suarez. Suarez, let's remember, had been very good before this, right? But last game against the Phillies, he gave up a run on 2 hits, right? And then most importantly, he already pitched an inning before this. So you're asking him to potentially go 2 innings against the top of their order, all right? And you had a chance to redeem yourself. It's not like Harper was the first batter. JT Realmuto gets a hit. You could see it on his face. And I tweeted out, I don't like this matchup. And I'm not giving myself props when I say that, right? What I'm trying to say is, when I tweeted out, I don't like this matchup before the home run happened, I'm pointing that out because everyone probably felt the same as me. And I think it says a lot that every Padres fan, everyone in attendance was like, oh no, this is bad. And don't get me wrong, Suarez put up a fight. Like I said, Harper fouled off a lot of tough pitches. That shouldn't be lost on this. I do think that in defense of Melvin, Suarez tried there. But for me, it's as simple as, you got your best, we bring in ours. I don't really care about, the next game, or if Hader can't go that far. Try it. And if God forbid he starts stinking in the 9th inning, okay, like that happens. But wouldn't you rather see if you can get it with him versus Josh Hader, or versus Robert Suarez, who had already given up a hit to JT Realmuto? That's my thing. And again, it was a tough at bat. I'm going to keep repeating that. Harper fouled off some tough pitches. I really do believe that. But I just feel like you should be bringing in your best. If you're going to lose, you lose like that. And it's disappointing. And a lot of people are going to rightfully criticize Bob Melvin for the series. Now, I think that people need to be careful because I think he'd done clearly a very good job at keeping the team afloat. You got to give them some credit. Maybe they knew how to approach guys. We don't know about the behind the scenes, but bottom line is they were better this year. Every time the Pods were having a really bad stretch and it looked like the collapse was happening, they came back, right? Beating teams like the Mets, beating teams like the Dodgers. So don't want to go too far as to say this is all on him, but it certainly wasn't a good look for the guy. It wasn't a good look. And by the way, that doesn't even mention another situation that happened. Top of the ninth inning, season on the line, you get some big walks. You get some big walks. And by the way, I should also mention the fact that you know the top of your lineup isn't coming to the plate, meaning it's going to be, Ha-Seong Kim and Drury. The fact that you know you're not going to get Manny and Soto, like for a fact, makes me think even more. Let's just try and continue this to the next inning. Let's get Hader to get rid of inning 8, and maybe we can figure things out a little bit later. That's just me. I don't like knowing that if Robert Suarez blows it here, you don't have the top of your lineup. That's my big issue. And then on top of that, last inning, first and second, didn't mean to get off track there. Trent Grisham at the plate after some tough at-bats, get a walk from Kim, get a walk from Brandon Drury. When Robertson clearly was a mess. And by the way, Phillies did it right. They saw he was weird. I mean, in fairness, he was weirder than Robert Suarez. He nearly hit Ha-Seong Kim, nearly hit Brandon Drury. He was super off. Took him out. Bring in Ranger Suarez. We don't care. We're just bringing him in. And I don't care if he's a potential starter for us down the road. We're using him right now. I thought that was good. That was a smart move. And what do the Padres do? Trent Grisham bunts. He bunts. On the first pitch, by the way. That should also be mentioned. Runners move up. Maybe he was trying to bunt for a hit, catch them off guard. I don't know. And in fairness, Trent Grisham had been pretty poor in this series. In fact, he was 0 for, I think. Like 8 strikeouts, something like that. I think Kevin Acey tweeted about it. Let me pull that up really quickly. He had been terrible in the series. So let's be clear. This isn't like an easy let Grisham hit necessarily, let him swing away. But yeah, 0 for 17 with 9 strikeouts in the NLCS. And then 0 for 18 after that. So my thing is, this is not necessarily a reflection only of Bob Melvin, but just the team in a nutshell, that they were saying we'd rather give up an out, right? Just give them a free out instead of using someone off the bench, using Jorge Alfaro, who I know people brought up. And I understand he hadn't taken any batting practice in a while. But bottom line is, everyone watching that is like, you just give him a free out. And then Austin Nola comes out, of course, brother of Aaron Nola, first pitch fly out. And I don't want to hate too much on Austin Nola, but man, do I hate first pitch outs. I really do. It is my number one thing. I brought this up in the start with Zach Wheeler for why I was upset with that one. It's really unfortunate that the season ended like that. You have Ranger Suarez coming in. You might be able to make a comeback here, bring it back to Petco, and instead 2 pitches for Ranger Suarez. So he ain't even messed up for the next series. You know what I mean? You didn't even make him work for practice the next day. He's going to be ripe and go. He didn't even have to throw 10 pitches. And maybe he's like, all right, yeah, give me a second today, coach. Hold on. No, he was just right. It's just really poor decision there. I didn't like the Grisham thing at all. And I understand he was bad. Just swing away, man. You know what I mean? Don't do this bunt thing, right? You get a single, you can tie the game anyway. You know what I mean? It's not like you're changing things all that much. You're not. It's not like there were 0 outs and you decide to move the runners up. All right, okay, maybe. I can understand that. Want to avoid the double play. Okay, I get that. Maybe that's what they're thinking, but it's 1 out. Didn't like that decision from Grisham and company. And by the way, this Trent Grisham series, a reminder of why you're allowed to praise someone for having a good playoffs and not say, actually, yeah, he is pretty good. No, Trent Grisham's not very good. He just had an out of body, as I tweeted about on Twitter. He was the that was our Linsanity these past 2 weeks of Trent Grisham. It really was. Pre-NLCS Grisham was Linsanity. Just 2 weeks of, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is doing all this. He looks like what we had hoped he wanted him, what we wanted him to be in the past. Man, it's just a really rough way to end it. I don't want to hate on Philadelphia. I don't want to do that thing. Hating on the Dodgers, I absolutely will do. Some crazy tweets out there you could find if you really try. One of which I brought up, which was them saying the Padres fans think they're special. The Dodgers have had a bunch of teams beat them in the playoffs. I'm like, wait a second. And this is from a Dodger fan. It's not like some neutral fan who was bringing this up. So you just twisted around that because you guys blow the series of the playoffs to everybody, that it's actually not impressive. It's unbelievable what people will do. It's unbelievable. It's almost commendable, really. But yeah, it was rough. And it was a heartbreaker. I really thought they had it. I really did. I thought they were going to go back to Petco. I'm not saying they would have won the series, but I think that I really felt it. And then right when that inning started, because remember, Suarez had a great inning to start things off. You know, I'm using today's episode almost as just like a group therapy session. So whoever's listening, this is for you. But man, absolutely rough. So rough. I just have my hood up and I'm not even putting on my Padres hat. I mean, I'll put it on for a second. But for people who are watching the YouTube, go check out Locked On Padres on YouTube. But we're not done with that. Let's continue talking about Bob Melvin's decisions. We need to talk about Saturday's game because one of the things people complain about, Padres offense hasn't shown up. Obviously, you have game one in which Zach Wheeler completely shuts them down. Then you have the second game when they show up a bit. They have that immaculate inning. And then you have Saturday's game in which the Padres offense absolutely did show up. 4 runs in the first inning off of a guy named, what's his name? Bailey Falter, sorry, which is a pretty poor name for someone who plays sports. Falter. And he faltered. And he was pretty bad, giving up 4 earned runs. After just the Padres absolutely jump on him. A Manny Machado home run when he silences the crowd. Machado living off of negative energy from the crowd. He loves that. Drury getting a double and Ha-Seong Kim driving one in too. It felt good, but then the sadness begins. And we got to talk about it. Got to talk about Mike Clevinger. I think that I tweeted this out yesterday that I actually thought that not bringing in Hader was more of a mistake by Bob Melvin versus starting Mike Clevinger. It's close. And here's why it's close. On the one hand, I think Hader was a lot more like, no one's going to hate the decision if you bring this guy in. With Clevinger, it's like, all right, they probably headed into that game, especially evidenced by the fact they bring in Manaea later, that they were like, okay, we're just going to try and get 2 innings out of him. It's going to be piggyback type of start. It's going to be a bullpen game. And they do that. But he can't get a single goddamn out. 0 innings, 3 earned runs on 3 hits, and a walk. They had to take him out. Hoskins gets a home run, and Bryce Harper gets a double. Can't even make it past the first, just like the Phillies guy. But the Phillies guy at least got a couple outs, which is wild, right? I tweeted this out as well. I've been plugging the Twitter a lot today. Apologies if that's been a little bit annoying. It is so frustrating as a fan, for me at least. This has always been a thing of mine. It's never been, when the umps are against us or whatever. And I'm not saying that happened this series. Or, oh my gosh, our superstars didn't come up clutch. Or, oh my gosh, injuries. For me, the most frustrating thing as a fan is when guys regress to a level that's like such a steep decline, it just drives you insane, right? What I mean by that is Mike Clevinger, Sean Manaea, all they had to do was be okay. 4 innings combined from them, maybe 3 earned runs, 2 earned runs between the two of them. That's all they were really asking for. And you can't do that. Gives up a home run to Hoskins. I should bring up Sean Manaea. Then gives up a double to Harper and a single to Nick Castellanos, who'd been struggling. How do I put this? Those guys are just busts. And Clevinger deserves, I don't want to rag on the guy too much. I already have in the past for not liking how he talked about Tatis so boldly and provocatively, considering his own history of just frankly, I'm not getting into the politics of it, but which is crazy to say that's politics of it, but just the fact that bottom line is he broke a rule back in 2020 very, very boldly, and that let down the team when he gets suspended and when there could be a potential outbreak that prevents your team from playing. Like, that was a selfish thing to do. And for you to come out against Tatis the way he did, I didn't like that. But he talked about it in the post game. I felt bad. He said, look, this is one of the worst days of my life. And I was like, I don't wish that upon anybody. That's really rough. But the bottom line is he was a bust as a Padre. A lot of people are bringing up the trade. We're going to go over that. We got a lot of stuff to do this offseason. Let me tell you, we're going to revisit that trade, revisit everything Mike Clevinger, but he was atrocious. None of the off-speed stuff was working. Everybody tees off on the fastball, throws an absolute donut to what's his face, Reese Hoskins. Hey, man. I mean, it was rough. It was rough. And the big question is, why did Melvin leave him in? Or more importantly, why was he starting? I think that I haven't decided how much to blame Bob Melvin on this, but bottom line is it's not entirely him that his pitcher couldn't even go in there and get you an out. You know what I mean? At some level, this falls on players. But that being said, I can't help but feel like just start the game with Nick Martinez. It's not like he's never started a game before. That's my biggest thing. If you were saying, let's start it with Suarez, or Nick Martinez was the number 5 starter for the San Diego Padres at the beginning of this year and for like the first few weeks of the season until Snell came back, until Clevinger came back, right? Like, he was the guy. And Mackenzie Gore, who I almost forgot about. He was the 5 star and he was okay, right? But he'd been on fire this postseason. Started off with him because he was great in this game. 3 innings, no hits, no walks, 3 Ks. I mean, he was unbelievable. He had an unbelievable postseason. Such an unbelievable postseason that he might opt out and we might lose him. We'll talk about that in the offseason as well. Really, really rough. Luis Garcia gives up a run, Steven Wilson, but the Padres tried. Soto gets a home run in this game, 2 RBIs. He came up big. Same thing with Manny. The stars did come through in this game. You even got 2 RBIs from Brandon Drury, 2 hits from Ha-Seong Kim. The offense did show up, but it was just too much from Philadelphia. And Manaea and Clevinger, in my opinion, the LVPs of the series for sure. That this series, if you had to blame players, it would be on them because you guys couldn't even go in and be like productive for an inning. You know what I mean? Like, that's just get some ground outs and get lucky. No. It was just bomb after bomb. And it's rough to watch. Really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, I need to talk to you about something that doesn't blow up and doesn't blow leads and what have you. All right. It's been a little bit. Yeah. 20 minutes without doing an ad thing. Let me talk to you guys. As everyone knows, athletes rise and fall in the ranks. But when it comes to saving money, when it comes to keeping you safe, Simply Safe, great name for a company, by the way, always stays on top. And right now you can save big with Simply Safe Home Security. They're giving listeners 40% off their advanced security system. And it was just named, by the way, the best home security of 2022 by US News. Love it. You'll love it too. It's awesome because your safety is the only thing that matters at Simply Safe. You know, I've mentioned on this podcast, I used to get scared. Oh, mommy, there are robbers on the roof. I would get scared. Well, Simply Safe gives you the peace of mind knowing that whatever happens, that people are on standby 24/7. And when a threat is detected, monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. It's really cool stuff, 24/7. And it's under $1 a day. That's less than half the cost of ADT's traditional professional installed plans. They keep you safe. Nothing much to it, guys. Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Remember, you can get 40% off your order when you visit simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb today. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. Locked on MLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right. Let's keep it moving, ladies and gentlemen. As I'm watching this, it seems that the Astros have taken the lead over the Yankees. So it is looking like it is going to be Astros, Phillies in the World Series. Friday's game, there isn't much to necessarily talk about because, to be honest, a lot of my thoughts I lost on my file that I had, my notes app. I deleted it. But Joe Musgrove, 5 2/3. He gives up 4 runs. Not his best start in the world for sure. But unfortunately, the Padres really couldn't hit Ranger Suarez, who I really thought they were going to. 5 innings, 1 earned run on 2 hits. It's funny because one of the things I mentioned in Friday's episode was Musgrove against guys like Kyle Schwarber could be really rough, right? Against these off-speed sort of pitches, and that's what happened, unfortunately. And that stunk. And then they couldn't hit any of the bullpen guys for the rest of the game. And that was the biggest thing, right? I think that this offseason, this playoff series is a reminder of, once again, why you try. Because the Philadelphia Phillies for years have been a team that has had a really poor bullpen, right? And they found some guys. Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Zach Eflin in the bullpen, not too bad for them either. In this game, he actually goes an inning without giving up a run. And then they also trade for David Robertson. And they didn't have a lot of farm system left, right? They just said, all right, give us Brandon Marsh and Noah Syndergaard and David Robertson. Like, all right, it's not the best, but we're still going to try anyway, because why not, right? And they did, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, because those players were certainly helpful in a lot of ways. Noah Syndergaard pitched pretty well for them too. Yeah, not much to say on that end. Bottom line, Padres didn't score. And again, look, it's tough. This was really tough, man. This was really tough. They tasted the World Series. It would have been one of the great runs to the World Series, even if they were going to get killed by whoever was in the World Series. Personally, I definitely think that the Astros would have beat them. I just think the Astros are built from top to bottom really well, and you can't just only win with stars. This is not the NBA. And I know there's a lot of questions. What do the Padres do from here? Brandon Drury isn't guaranteed. Josh Bell isn't guaranteed. Mike Clevinger is a free agent. Sean Manaea is a free agent, right? Are they going to extend Juan Soto? Personally, I don't think so. I don't smell that, at least not immediately, because he still does. That's one of the reasons he costs so much of a prospect haul, because of the fact that he has some years of club control. We'll see how that goes. And then, of course, you're going to have the other big elephant in the room, Fernando Tatis Jr. How does he come back? Can he come back well and healthy? And can he be big? Because that's one of the reasons they love the Soto trade, right? Because you were going to have Tatis, Soto, Manny, and that was going to be a deadly threesome, right? But for now, instead, we sit here and we have to think about, what went wrong. And it stinks because, I mentioned this in my now. The one thing I did say about Phillies fans is I saw a little bit of a bit going around that their fans are just so much better. And it's because they're louder, which may be very true. But again, be very careful. I don't want you guys saying that as a negative now and using it to besmirch Padres fans who have been showing out for this team for a while. And they had the 5th best attendance in baseball this year. Phillies were 16th. And before people say, well, the Phillies didn't have stars before then, they spent how much money on Castellanos and Schwarber in the offseason? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you headed into this year not having anything. They actually had quite a few stars. Oh, well, that's just this year. Okay, 2021 too. They were 14th in attendance, or 15th. Okay, 2020 we didn't have it. 2019 they were 10th. Congrats, your first year of Bryce Harper. You figured to show up. Congrats on that. So I'd be careful on that. It's the only little beef I have with the Phillies fans, but otherwise, again, congrats to them. But sheesh, I mean, I don't really have much else to say other than I really disagree with the decisions Bob Melvin made, particularly Josh Hader, because I feel like just bring him in first and second. Maybe you get a double play. It's not like Bryce Harper is above putting the ball on the ground because of how hard he sometimes hits the ball. Maybe he scoops it there. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he still hits the home run. But at least you're like, you know what? You put in the best guy. If Suarez, this was his first inning, I think even that would provide a little bit more of leeway, a little bit more understanding to why Josh Hader wasn't brought in. You'd say, all right, this is his first inning though, and Robert Suarez is good. I get it, but you could see he was razzled, man. You see that the crowd was going nuts. That's what's always rough when you're a fan, right? When you're watching these players and teams make decisions that you're like, am I the only one that feels this? You know what I mean? Like it's really tough. But then again, he was good in the previous inning, but my God, man. It's tough. It's tough. Very tough. Give me a lot of decisions going forward. We have to see what the Padres do in the offseason. What are the free agent acquisitions going to be, if any? What trades are they going to do? Right? You know, AJ Preller ain't done. He's going to do stuff. How do they replace guys like Clevinger and Manaea? Granted, after saying that, I am now laughing because it's like, might not take much to replace those guys. I'm not trying to be mean, but that's the truth. What's going to happen with Nick Martinez? Is he going to opt out of his contract? Again, I stand by that. Did not like that contract when they gave it to him. I don't like, how did he earn player options like this, where he can just opt out if he's good or stay attached to them if he's bad at? He might opt out and get a really handsome deal. I keep getting Drew Pomeranz vibes from him, who unfortunately is still hurt. Thought he was going to be able to come back for the Pods. He didn't. But, you know, that's what my vibes I'm getting, where he's going to get like a nice, decent deal for a team that really wants a long inning reliever who can even occasionally start sometimes. And that was what was fun about Nick Martinez. He has a swagger to him. I was dead wrong back in July when they signed him. I forgot when they signed him. No, it was probably before then. But I was critical of it. I changed my mind. But, man, he had a great season. But, yeah, overall, really disappointing ending. I really thought they were going to bring it back to Petco. And they didn't. And this is what happens. This is sports. This is how it works. For anyone saying, how can you beat the Dodgers and Mets, 2 100-win teams, but then lose to the Phillies? Well, baseball is just a different sport, right? Baseball is a sport where if you get hot for a series, anyone can beat anybody, right? So it's unfair to look at this and say, well, if you beat the Dodgers, how can you not beat the Phillies? Maybe you used it up. You know what I mean? Some guys get hot. We just talked about Trent Grisham. He got hot at the right time. Got hot for 2 series. He got you there. And I know he stunk in the NLCS, but he did do his part by helping you in the first 2 rounds. So you need other guys to step up. Unfortunately, especially on the pitching side, weren't able to do that. And it stings. It really does. I was devastated yesterday. Not to mention the football team that I follow stinks too, but that's another podcast. Really rough. Really, really rough. I want to close out today's episode by just saying, once again, just an absolute delight, an absolute pleasure, an honor, a privilege to host this podcast and to cover this team. I know that I am nothing in the big scheme of things. I am certainly not an online sensation, right? But it's still nice every now and then when people reach out and say, hey, I listened to the show. Shout out my guy, Josh Landis. Reach out to me when we were at the Nationals game. Happened to be there. We took a picture. He said, hi, great guy. Shout out to my guy, Josh. You know, all the people that reach out. I mentioned Murdy. I mentioned a lot of people on this show. Just there's a bunch of people who listen, and some people have sent really kind notes and saying, hey, you know, I've been listening since the pandemic season, right? I've been listening since 2020, and that genuinely does make me happy, especially as someone who's had a little bit of a tough year, for sure. I've experienced what you mortals call anxiety issues for like the first time in my life, which is very odd, and I'm working on it. I'm doing a lot better, but still. And this team was kind of there. Even on the bad days. That's what's so fun about baseball, is it's always just kind of there, you know? Don't get me wrong, it is come to an end for us, and it's going to be really tough the next bunch of months, but in general, that's what I love about sports, is they can kind of just be there for you. And even if it's something for you to complain about, it's just kind of there for you. And in this case, I get to cover it for like a career, you know what I mean? Like it's a thing I do. And again, I can't emphasize enough, this was a roller coaster fun season, and there's nothing to be, I'd say, miserable about, right? Think about the Mets fans. Think about the Brewers fans, if there's a bunch of them that happen to listen to this podcast, that they're watching their team from first place give away their best players, right? Like there are a lot of other teams out there that have it worse, the Oakland A's and whatnot. The Yankees went out even worse, which, assuming they're still losing, which it does look like they are. But man, I mean, it was still an incredible run. Remember the good memories, you know? And also, remember the trade for Juan Soto. Remember that Tatis drama all year. And then you beat the Dodgers and the Mets. Remember the good stuff. Remember how fun the trade deadline was. And remember that clearly what this year showed you is that there is a commitment to this team. The attendance of the fans is helping that. I'm sure Seidler, Preller, all this stuff, they're still going to be there, and they're still going to be a solid team, hopefully. And remember this, the Philadelphia Phillies, if there's one thing to take away from this, because I just mentioned we don't know what's going to happen with Martinez. We don't know exactly what the Soto extension, we got to see what happens with Tatis, Drury, Bell, like you have some depth issues that clearly showed up by the fact that you didn't have a better thing to do in that last game than to have Trent Grisham bunt, right? Like the fact that that was in your opinion, the Padres' opinion, the best course of action says a lack of depth, right? Clevinger and Manaea, like here's the thing. Look at the Philadelphia Phillies. That team was spending a lot of money and they barely had any way to maneuver. They did not have any prospects, almost at all. The only one they really had was Bryson Stott, who came into the league and was whatever. Like he had some big hits for them, but not great, right? And instead they said, we got to find a way. Brandon Marsh, David Robertson, Noah Syndergaard. There are ways to build your team that aren't just superstars, and you can just hope that it goes right. In the case of the Padres, maybe next year they go out and get Robbie Grossman, just a name. I'm throwing it out there. I have no idea. They say, let's get this guy. Maybe he'll be okay, an average, right? Ha-Seong Kim could get better. Look at the Phillies team and think to yourself, they spent a lot of team. They kind of went all in, and then they still managed to kind of get some little chunks and pieces. Remember that for the offseason, for not just hoping that it's only the big move that gets you far, because it's not. It's not just the big move. That's my only positive words to say. I'm trying to be as positive as possible, but yeah, it's tough, man. But again, thank you to everybody who listens. It was a blast covering this team now for the third season, which is wild to think about. When the world first ended in 2020, to still be hosting this podcast, I remember what that was like, and just had no idea that this team would, coincidentally become incredible once I joined the fold, which, not to pat myself on the back, but no, it was great. And I thank you to everybody who listens. And hopefully you tune in for the rest of the offseason. Like I said, got to talk about Soto. Got to talk more about Mike Clevinger, Sean Manaea, Nick Martinez. What trades are they going to do? What are the best offseason free agents available? For the record, I hit on one of those, Tyler Anderson. I was pretty right on him, and even Alex Cobb. So remember, before we get there, though, remember, it's not only about the big moves. They're fun, but just remember, you got to keep going. You got to stay faithful, and remember that this is a process. Yeah, I just talked about how many times the Dodgers have freaking lost, right? Eventually, it sort of went right for them in 2020, if everybody counts that. So keep that in mind. Don't be totally miserable. This season still gave us a lot to be happy about. A lot. And Phillies are a heck of a team. At least it wasn't Dodgers, right? At least it wasn't the Rockies that did us in, or the Giants, right? It was a Phillies team that caught fire at the perfect time. And that's just how these things shake out. But remember the good times, seriously, because this was a really fun season that had a whole lot of craziness. Not quite as fun as 2020, in my opinion, but it was wild because of all the roller coaster stuff. Oh, Tatis, Snell, Clevinger are hurt to start the season. Oh, here we go. And then it's like, oh, Darvish is back. Blake Snell kind of coming back. Oh my gosh, we're trading for Soto. Oh, Tatis is hurt. Oh my God, we beat the roller coasters are fun. That's my takeaway. But yeah, guys, tomorrow's episode, don't know what I'm going to do just yet, but probably do more of a eulogy for the San Diego Padres. Everybody be safe out there. Don't get into too many arguments with Dodger fans, as much as fun as it might be. And with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever. You know the drill by now. You know what I'm saying? Just look up Locked On Padres, go to a podcast and you find it. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. and then at LO_Padres on Twitter, and then Locked On Padres on YouTube. Until next time, and I emphasize until next time, stay safe, and I must emphasize even more, stay faithful. My Friars faithful homies, it's a good season still. Until then, take care.